Alright, this telephone call here is with Sean Hubert of Tillamook. He just took the interim director role at Care Inc. I've been going to there and taking their abuse for a few years now. When I got released from jail, I went in there and followed instructions on what I'm supposed to do at Care, and was super nice. Even if I feel sick, even if I just want to scream at the top of my lungs what horrible people work there, I went in, I made jokes, I talked pleasantly, kept a calm and civilized voice. And what's the number one thing I'm told to do by people prior to this situation? Why don't you smile more? I don't have any teeth, but I certainly try it. I look creepy as shit. I've seen myself smile. It's not pleasant. So let's get started on this. This is about Tillamook corruption. This is just the most recent crap with it. This has been going on here in Tillamook since 2022. Oh, come on.
Gary, this is Debbie.
Hello, Debbie. This is Sean Schwartz. I literally just got a call from you guys. I was almost beating on my phone trying to get the thing to answer, and it just wasn't working.
Oh, okay. Can you hold on, please?
Yes, ma'am.
See you call. All right, hold on.
There's a bit of elevator music, and I'm sorry about that. I suppose I could try to scroll forward. Oh, perfect.
Hi, this is Sean.
Hey, Sean, this is Sean.
Yes, how are you?
I'm not feeling too good, but I was finding it entertaining that we both have the same name.
We do indeed. Yes.
I know you're the interim guy, and I'm sorry, I'm autistic, so when there's a lot of noise driving by, like a vehicle just drove by, it kind of distracts me. And I'm living in a tent, so if it gets a little bit windy and you're not able to hear me, I apologize. I basically live in a giant plastic bag.
No worries, no worries.
All right, so one of the things, the lady that I spoke with, Debbie gave her my number last week, and I didn't actually get the message until yesterday morning. I got like four answering machine messages all at once that go all the way back to November. So I had asked for the. I should also say they're not all from her, obviously. Some of them were telemarketers and, those people that call you up and say that you've won stuff and you just have to call this place and give them all your information in order to claim it kind of crap. Director, because I got to try to turn in situations with not just my records that are there, but also the ongoing abuse that I'm having to turn in. The fact that every mandatory reporter I'm sent to ends up sending me around in circles. I'm told that they can do something, and then when I try that, then they tell me, oh, well, my boss says we're not allowed. I had to take I chose to take the mandatory reporter training in Colorado. Every state that I go to, I keep up on the mandatory reporter laws, but I'm not a mandatory reporter. I've never been a mandatory reporter. The reason that I had to go through that is because as homeless people, we're blown off. My job in Colorado was as a homeless liaison, so it wasn't even a paying job. My job was to basically run around take people to places where they wouldn't freeze to death, go them to some of the services on 55th and Arapahoe, which is where like the Social Security office and stuff like that is, and you have to know when the mandatory reporters are blowing you off and refusing to do their jobs. It's less likely if you go in with somebody who's educated and aware of the situation. What I've had to deal with since I got here is the same thing that every homeless man pretty much has to deal with. If you go to the hospital, you're treated like you're a drug addict. If you talk to the cops, you're treated like you're a drug addict, or you're treated like you're mentally ill. My quote unquote mental illnesses do exist. I do have post traumatic stress disorder, and I also have Asperger's disorder, which a lot of people take advantage of by trying to pretend that I'm delusional. Also, part of my speech issues, part of it does come from PTSD. A lot of it comes from the fact that I have no teeth. So, a lot of times, the words that I say might be. Let's pause this a second. Yeah, there's literally sirens going off in the background. I do apologize for that. If you guys have the same issues as me, it kind of distracts you from being able to hear. I try to explain that, and when I explain that to police or mental health workers that are friends with police officers, the first thing they start doing is talking over me and bringing in a group of people to overwhelm me. That's the thing about autism. I told these people how to work with me and how not to send me into a mental breakdown, and they did everything they could to send me into a mental breakdown. I'm not talking about Sean in specific, although what he's done here is very destructive. He had Melissa call me, and we'll see why that's important here. I don't know how long them sirens are going to be going off. Sounds pretty close. They might be going to bust some of the drug addicts across the street. It's not their drug addiction that's the issue. Well, it kind of is. Most of the issue is the violence and the threatening and the keeping me up until 6 o'clock in the morning. Did I mention I have OCD? I'm not sure if you can hear that siren in the background. Yeah, that's right. There was also a siren going off while I was calling her. Alright, so for a lot of us, it's both a PTSD thing as well as an autistic thing. I'm sure you're aware of what comorbid conditions are. So for a lot of us, especially when we're in a situation where we're overwhelmed, um, stuff like that can basically derail the train, so to speak. I don't know how much training that you've had in autism or what your background is, because like I didn't even know what your name was until I want to say yesterday.
Yeah, I don't have any formal training in autism, although I have worked in and around both behavioral health and mental health services for quite some time. But I am not a licensed provider or a clinician or anything.
Right. I kind of figured. One of the things about us is we're all different, just like anybody else, and getting to know us is kind of the key to understanding it. As far as education goes, I think that autism education is important, and so is homeless education. You guys, I'm not sure, is this the first time that you've worked at a place where you've had to work with so many homeless people?
Not at all.
All right, very good.
Yeah, I know. I've worked for many organizations doing both housing and frontline street outreach and engagement for about 20 years.
Very good. So you basically do hear what it is that I did in Colorado. You just get paid for it.
Yep.
Yeah. So in Colorado, we had to do it a lot different because there are a lot of services to help people, but as you know, there's also not a lot of money to go around for it. So what we did is that if it was specifically a pregnant homeless woman, we generally tried to either A, get her on a bus to wherever it is that would help her out, or if she had a job, then we would help to get the first month and last month's rent as homeless people. So, homeless people are able to come with that kind of funding in Boulder, not so much elsewhere. Um, yeah. Well, there's a lot of active people in the community. I'm going to stop that. We got some rain going and a jet going over at the same time. It might be difficult to hear what's being said in the video. I do apologize for it only being 7 minutes and 39 seconds in before we got to deal with this again. But I don't live in a house. I live in a tent. So it's not soundproofed at all. Community who are aware of the homeless issues there, whereas it tends to be here especially, there just seems to be a lot of hatred for the homeless. The other thing is there's a lot of drug addicts, and that's not specific to Tillamook, and it's not specific to Tillamook homeless people, because the majority of the drug addicts I know here do have a roof over their head. But as a homeless person, I'm assumed to be a drug addict, assumed to be delusional, assumed to be schizophrenic, assumed to be all of these things that people want to project when they're having a bad day. And it's not just the basic targeting. One of the things that the thing that I've been repeatedly sent to care about is that you guys are supposed to have resources to help disabled people who are being abused. Well, here comes the rain. That's one of the things about making these videos. Obviously, I'm still in a tent. It'd be nice to play these all the way through and not have to take rain breaks or wind breaks. At least right now it's not windy. One part of my tent does collect water, so I'm going to go push that off right now. I don't want to get too heavy and breaking through. And it just keeps getting heavier, and now there's that jet coming over again. And this time of year, it's going to be hard to find a time when it's not raining. See, for you guys, a lot of this stuff is just dependent on being home. For me, it's dependent upon the weather. It's dependent on access. Like right now, I got a whole storage unit that's full of evidence that I have zero access to because I can't drive there. I have to literally depend on someone else. That's the problem with victimizing me out of what little resources that I had, including a running vehicle. Now I can't even do that. Now I have to depend on somebody else to do that. I got two people I can ask, and both of them get too depressed to function. So when I ask them, it's a, well, eventually maybe kind of thing. They are non-committal. Mandatory reporter thing. But the same thing with TFCC, the same thing with all the other agencies that I've been sent around to since 2022. Now, I get that that's not you at all that did any of those things, but the thing is, I'm still having the repercussions of that. I'm also having to turn in people who did wrong things into themselves, which makes no sense. When I'm being assaulted and I have to go to a place that's supposed to advocate for us, and I'm told, like, for example, I was told if I'm assaulted since I got out of jail 6 months ago, on false charges, by the way. They had to actually drop the charges and let me go. But it was another situation where, 6 months of this, 6 months of let's fill out this housing paperwork. I already filled it out. Russell actually said that they had misplaced or lost that paperwork, so he gave me more housing paperwork to fill out. I filled out the more housing paperwork, and when I took it in the next day to give it to him, he said, "Oh, well, we found the housing paperwork, so we don't need you to make extras." So then there was the 3 weeks, and then where he was supposedly going to be able to help me afterwards, and then they transferred him to the night shift, so he's not able to be the peer support. Um, I'm having to deal with now the situation where, like 2.5 months ago, 2 months ago, something like that. I told Miss Shelley that I needed my file. I also gave her some information from my file from TFCC because it shows why it is that I'm being run around in circles and why I'm not getting the services that are supposed to be provided. And in exchange for that, she was actually supposed to go over the pieces of paperwork that I gave her, go over them with me, and she never did that. As far as the housing thing, she wants to bring up the housing thing in almost every meeting that we've had and push the housing thing, and I keep offering to fill out the paperwork again because apparently it's been lost again. She said, "Oh no, you don't need to do that. I'll check the emails," and we've had like. Okay, so this has been our issue from day one with Miss Shelley. Finding the housing paperwork. I offer to fill it out again. She says no, she's going to go through the emails. Why don't you just talk to Russell? 4 or 5 sessions where she's said that. If I got to fill out the paperwork again, I'll fill that out again. And I say that every session. I just got a message from Shelley saying that she's not going to work with me anymore, which, that makes perfect sense given the fact that. By the way, she sent that message in between when I spoke with Marie Miller and this telephone call here. So it was a matter of just, I don't know, a few minutes, maybe half an hour at most, I think. Not for certain. Destroying evidence and destroying stuff in my file is definitely against the law. When she told me that she took all of the bad stuff out of my file, and she also told me that there was a mean picture of me that was on their wall before I was arrested, and that it was eventually taken down and put in a drawer, and that 2 months ago she shredded it in a shredder. Well, I wasn't recording all of. So, yeah, this is stuff that I'm telling him that there's actual evidence of. Sorry, I had it paused for a second because the alarm got pretty loud. Of our meetings or sessions. As a result, I had to wait 2 months for her to admit to destroying any of that. I do have the screenshots of that, but it's not just that issue of that one little thing. It's a whole series of this situation. It's a whole series of these abuses. It's a whole series of people looking the other way. Like, if I wasn't filling out the housing paperwork, that'd be one thing. If I wasn't repeatedly offering to fill it out again every time that you guys lose it, and I know that's not your fault, I'm just saying, Care Incorporated, because it wasn't just her that lost it. If I offer to do it again, that's because I'm willing to fill out that paperwork again. But at the same time, when I'm a disabled person who's being abused, and that's what I've been sent for from the very start, is turn in this abuse, at some point it needs to stop being redirected to housing, especially when I haven't gotten housing in the last 4 years and everybody keeps losing the papers.
I guess let me ask you a question here because obviously, so we sometimes I'm not sure which organization referred you to CARE. Sometimes
All of them.
organizations don't understand what it is CARE does. We obviously, our primary focus obviously is either in providing shelter or providing
I didn't ask him for an abuse program. I do want to point that out. The first time that I was sent to care, I was sent there because they're supposed to have rooms that a victim could sit down in and do all of the things that. Well, let me explain it like this. Those of you who have ever been victimized and had to go in and turn it in, and they actually took it seriously, they'll allow you to go into an interview room and do this stuff. They'll sit down with you in an interview room and allow you to make an actual statement where you're not distracted by the traffic driving by and all of the other crap going on in the environment. The cops here say they don't have any such thing. I know better because I've been to the jail, but I didn't know better when I first got here, and I was pissed off that they don't because legally they're supposed to. They're supposed to have an interview room for victims. They said they don't have any such thing, and they sent me around to CARE and to TFCC. I also needed advocacy because I was getting blown off, and because even though I can collect the evidence, I need assistance in turning it in. And of course, I'm told that these places are supposed to advocate for victims, not just CARE, but also TFCC. And all these places, of course, have mandatory reporters. And I tell them that that's what I'm there for. I told them that I was there for those rooms. And when I was sent there because they're supposed to be mandatory reporters, I told them that too. The thing is that the police have committed a lot of crimes, and without somebody actually taking the abuse seriously, which means taking a look at the evidence, realizing that it is very real, which Russell has done, and then not treat it like a delusion. Turn it in as you're supposed to. Russell's not a mandatory reporter. This is one of the ways that they get away with doing this crap, is by not allowing us to speak to mandatory reporters. Meanwhile, this call is pretty long, so we're going to have to break it into 2 segments. I do apologize.
That we operated some kind of an abuse program.
It wasn't an abuse program. It's you guys. I was sent to you guys because you're supposed to be mandatory reporters, and you're supposed to. Basically, the cops blew me off and sent me to you guys. That's what happened. The police sent me to you guys. I was sent to CARE. I was sent to TFCC. I was sent to Tides of Change. I was sent to Northwest Senior and Disability Services. I am a disabled person. I do get disability money for being disabled. So when it comes to the mandatory reporter laws, it's the same as if a 9-year-old girl goes to a mandatory reporter, be it the school nurse or a police officer, and says, hey, my dad's raping me when I go home every day. And that's not how it's being treated. I'm being treated like I'm only disabled when it is being used to pretend that I'm schizophrenic or delusional. And then when it comes to helping me because I am disabled, then I get treated like because I'm not schizophrenic or delusional that I don't need help. And this has been going on with CARE for a while. The thing is that I've had multiple people there at CARE tell me that they are mandatory reporters. And as far as being a disabled person, like I should be able to go tell a mandatory reporter when something happens and have it be taken seriously. But it's not taken seriously because I'm homeless. There's a lot of bias against the homeless. And I have to deal with people who, obviously, I don't do drugs. Obviously, I'm not schizophrenic. But when I have to try to turn this in, I have to worry that the mandatory reporters I'm turning in are going to pretend that I'm schizophrenic or delusional. And there's a lot of evidence that the fact that when I tried to turn this in, I tried to turn it in because these are mandatory reporters. The people who are supposed to help out the disabled, they sent me in the same circles. Every single agency, including CARE, TFCC, they all sent me around to each other for, like, I don't know, probably can't figure out the months off the top of my head because the situation is the important thing.
About a year and a half.
Between 2022, when I first tried to turn this stuff in, and when I was put in jail, all of these agencies continued to send me around in circles. All of these different agencies, I got to speak to the mandatory reporters who are supposed to be mandatory reporters in these agencies, and each one of them wanted to deflect and send me to a different agency. When it comes to Melissa, I was there when Melissa was telling all of the people that work in the lower building that the police told them they're only to call the police or the sheriff's department if one of us is suicidal or wanting to harm somebody else, and that if we're trying to turn in somebody who had harmed us, that they're supposed to deflect. And that's one of the things with mandatory reporters and the housing thing is that every one of these agencies wanted me to fill out housing paperwork, and they're all mandatory reporters. I'm still disabled regardless of this, and what they've done on my paperwork with the destruction of evidence, and then, of course, people who know the situation, such as the Natalie Bollinger situation, are real, they're still pretending that I'm delusional despite all of the evidence otherwise. The stuff that's in my records and in my files there, we need to sit down with somebody who's going to take it seriously and actually review it with me, because, like, I'm being treated inhumanely and being run around in circles.
So what, I guess, the only thing that we can do is, if someone is wanting to, if an adult with disabilities is wanting to file a report with the Oregon Department of Human Services, we can help facilitate a call to the Oregon Department of Human Services. Usually that is done when someone is unable to make that call themselves. Again, not knowing the details of what, kind of abuse you're referring to.
A lot of physical assaults, and also mandatory reporters who don't want to do their jobs and have lied, which has affected me in court. I've got evidence of the CARE employees and TFCC employees lying knowingly on my paperwork, and that's going to follow me everywhere until we actually go through and get that stuff taken out of there. A lot of people were mad at me because I told on them. I shouldn't have had to tell on mandatory reporters who just didn't want to report. As far as the Health and Human Services, that's what I've been trying to do this entire time. I get run around in circles. I spend all of my money running around all the different places that CARE sends me to, and TFCC sends me to, and Tides of Change sends me to, and Northwest Senior and Disability Services sends me to, and the Sheriff's Department sends me to, and the DA's office sends me to, and the Police Department sends me to. And I'm trying to get you to understand that I've been going around in circles here in Tillamook alone since 2022. Yeah, so basically they say, oh, you're at the Department of Redundancy Department, and what you need is the Redundancy Department of Redundancy. You're at the wrong place. All of them say that I'm at the wrong place. All of them said that they don't have a room that I can sit down and do that in. And then, of course, the mandatory reporter thing, oh no, we're not actually going to do anything about the people assaulting you. Have you tried therapy? Have you tried therapy? Well, therapists are all mandatory reporters. If they're not, I don't have any reason to go to one. And if I am going to one and they're not doing their job as a mandatory reporter, then I have no reason to go. If I go to a mandatory reporter and they just want to bully me, why am I going to go back to get bullied some more?
And I appreciate that. I guess what I'm trying to suss out is, CARE is a small organization, and really, our services are really just getting people indoors, whether that's in shelter or in housing. We really don't, we aren't able to do much.
Except that they're not getting us indoors, and the housing that they have is entirely inadequate. I mean, you're stuffing victims in with their predators. more than one of the people that I had to stay with in that shelter that one night that I was there have been predatory towards me before. Of course, the one that was the biggest issue, well, I still don't go screaming at her or yelling at her or anything like that. I still treat her like a human being every time I see her, despite the fact that she's done some pretty mean things. As far as helping hands goes, we've gotten to hear Claire Jordan about helping hands more than once, and we'll post up some more conversations with her because, like, we've already got what, 8 conversations with her. That's pretty significant. There might be more than that. These guys are a small organization. I get that. Everybody's excuse here in Tillamook is they're a small place. You know, they don't have much funding. Well, they get all sorts of funding if I keep on going back. If I keep on going back and every meeting that I have with them, I have to repeat the same crap. Do you want me to fill out the housing paperwork again? For the last, like, 3 or 4 months, the housing paperwork has been lost and Miss Shelley's done jack shit. I offer every single meeting that she actually shows up to, which is very rare. I offer to fill them out again. And again, she says, oh, I'll check the emails. Like, get the fuck on it, lady. Then she says she's going to make calls to get me the help that I need, get me the services that I need. Well, how about a mandatory reporter who's going to take the abuse seriously? Call it in with me and tell them that this stuff is happening. Take a look at how much of it there really is. Instead of blowing me off and dismissing it, it's not an issue. Press play again.
And it sounds like what you're looking for is something besides that.
A mandatory reporter. Those phone calls to the Health and Human Services, yeah, that's what should have been done from the start, and there definitely should be a record of it. Yeah, so if the mandatory reporters that I had to talk to in Virginia had taken the situation with Natalie Bollinger and her heroin addiction and the situation with her family seriously, well, we could have stopped this right there. Now, when they coordinated with people across jurisdictional lines and state lines to have me harmed over things that never happened. See, here's the thing. Natalie Bollinger pretended that I stalked her to Virginia. That never happened. And after Virginia, well, I thought she was in Virginia. And I was pissed off that I couldn't get a protection order against people actually assaulting me in Colorado. I couldn't do anything at all. Just get sent to Nicole Peralta for help. Nicole Peralta was a mental health person in Nebraska, and Tamara was my caseworker there. Tamara is the only caseworker who actually helped to try to facilitate this stuff so I could turn in the crimes that were being committed against me, but she quit her job before finishing. The stuff that you guys have as far as what you have in your records about me, yeah, we do need to go over those, and I have asked for a copy of that more than once. I was told that they can't give a copy to me, they can only give it to the police. Melissa told me that, by the way.
Well, let me do this. You know, I have not talked with staff at all about this, so I don't know if there is a file or not. I'm very happy to do that. And if there is a file, I'm very happy to arrange for you to release that to you.
Yes, sir. Also, I've been trying to. So I'm told that I have to go through you guys about the abuses that happened there.
You do not. You absolutely do not. I mean, if there is.
And that's good that I don't have to go through them. But what do the police keep telling me? We got multiple recordings from them saying that If I have an issue with those agencies and they're committing actual felonies, if I have an issue with these agencies, I have to turn it into these agencies. And the police aren't willing to investigate anything until I've turned it into these agencies. I've already tried turning this crap into these agencies for years. They keep doing the same thing. If they're supposed to help with housing, they need to get on the housing thing. Elsewise, they do have mandatory reporters there. Same thing with TFCC. Same thing at the hospital. I told the hospital when I went there, because I needed a mandatory reporter and I needed a state worker to be there, a social worker. Well, that's very specifically because I am going to be talked over. I have communication issues, especially when I'm scared, especially after an incident. I'm afraid for a good reason. And instead of taking that situation seriously and doing something about the abuse against me, these places all capitalize on that situation to either try to make money or pretend that I'm delusional. Usually, it's at the beginning to make money. And then when they realize that I'm trying to turn them in for taking advantage of me in such a way, well, then it's the other way, isn't it? It's kind of like mandatory reporters who they tell you they believe you, but they never bother looking at evidence. And then when you have to turn them in because they didn't do their job, well, then you're delusional, right? That's not okay. That's abusing your position of power, and it's also gaslighting. Probably should not do that. Better don't do that, as Shay Darnell says. Better don't do that.
If there is, it sounds like somewhere either, obviously if there's an assault, obviously that is a police issue. If there's an abuse with someone with, an adult with developmental disabilities, that is an Oregon Department of Human Services matter in terms of investigation.
The problem is getting those people to investigate because they're not investigating. The police have already shown that they're not going to investigate. They're going to intimidate. They're going to procrastinate. Now, as far as the Department of Health and Human Services, who are supposed to investigate, well, they're not doing that either. And that's one of the things that I really have to try to explain to every one of these people. And when they pass me off to somebody else, I have to start off from the beginning. And I'm trying to turn in Shelley and I'm trying to turn in Melissa at this point for literal crimes that they committed, and I am explaining it to him at this point. It's just not getting through his head, I guess. Well, the issue is that somebody needs to look at the evidence and help me to turn it in. Otherwise, I get run around in circles. My disabilities are ignored. My abilities are ignored. My evidence is ignored. We never get to the point where anybody ever... Now, you can hear the rain in the background and my voice getting elevated. My voice isn't getting elevated because I'm trying to scream at him. It's getting elevated because of the ambient noise around me. Actually looks at evidence, and that's the point where, like, your coworkers that care, the people that you just started working with, I've had to deal with this with them since 2022. Also, I apologize for my voice raising. It started raining here, and like I said, I live in a plastic tent. Okay, so that second time, when it got even louder than that, it's because I was sticking my face up to the telephone and I had the recording device right next to the telephone so that I could best record everything that's said. So,
let me, Sean, let me do this. Let me both inquire about anything that we may have in terms of the file, but let me also understand, I'm actually going to reach out to ODHS and understand what the process and or what an appropriate agency may be here in Tillamook, and let me
I've been to every agency in Tillamook. So here's another issue. A few years ago, they changed the laws here in Oregon so that they could encourage corruption. One of the things you guys got to see already, they tried to encourage all of the drug use in America to come here by making it legal to use it outdoors. That was not smart. We'll back this up a little bit and replay that part because it is so important. So,
yeah. Let me, Sean, let me do this. Let me both inquire about anything that we may have in terms of a file, but let me also understand. I'm actually going to reach out to ODHS and understand what the process and/or what an appropriate agency may be here in Tillamook, and let me see.
I've been to every agency in Tillamook. That's the problem. I have been. Overwhelmingly, that's the problem. I go to all these different places and they say, oh, well, you know, we're just a referral agency, but I can get you some numbers. And then I get some numbers. And then I call those numbers, and most of them are numbers I've already called that already gave me the numbers to somebody else who gave me the numbers to somebody else. These agencies say, oh, no, we're not mandatory reporters. We're a referral agency. So literally, we've got dozens of government agencies whose entire job is to pass you off onto another government agency, whose entire job is to pass you off onto another government agency. My God, like, it's not that I'm not trying, it's that they make it impossible. Literally impossible if you're a disabled homeless man. You get run around in circles nobody else has to go through. Nobody else has to go through this. And of course, the laws that they changed, one of the things when they made free drugs basically here in Oregon and invited all the druggies here, they also invited a bunch of corruption and free money to the county by all these druggies coming in. And then the counties, well, they're going to investigate their own corruption. So now there's literally no oversight. There is no oversight with the police. They're not overseeing themselves. They get free reign of whatever they want to do, and all of their friends that they work with and all of these other agencies, and they do work together with these other agencies, they're all going to cover for each other. They're all going to make money off of all these druggies that are coming into Oregon. Hey, you invite a bunch of criminals to come into your state, they're going to continue being criminals. Not every druggie is a criminal. I can understand that, but then again, it might not be illegal to be addicted, but that doesn't mean that you're going to make the best choices while you're on those substances. And we've got a severe substance abuse problem. And of course, those people with substance abuse issues abuse people they know they can get away with abusing. They want to get their drugs by whatever means. Between attacking you and your entire family in broad daylight and mugging a homeless person for whatever he's got in his pockets, they're more likely to mug a homeless person who's just trying to sleep. The care dozens of times. I've been to THCC dozens of times. I've been to TFCC dozens of times. Sorry, TCCHC. I've been to the police dozens of times.
What I want to do though is because if there is a, and again, you know, if there's an abuse of someone with developmental disability, ODHS is who oversees that. And I want to understand from them if who the appropriate agency is here locally actually to be involved in that work.
So the appropriate local agencies are TFCC, if it's a mental disability, and they've obviously already committed felonies to keep out the fact that I'm not schizophrenic. Knowing full well that I wasn't schizophrenic or delusional, they wanted to continue to push that. For physical disabilities, that would be Northwest Senior and Disability Services, but we've got recordings going back all the way to September 2022 of these places sending us back and forth. Before September of 2022, Northwest Senior and Disability Services said that although I'm physically disabled, I have to go to Tillamook Family Counseling Center because they're the ones who are supposed to investigate abuse against mentally disabled people. So I went there and they said, well, yeah, but you have physical disabilities, so you have to go to Northwest Senior and Disability Services. This is why there's dozens of calls back and forth between these places and myself. This is also the reason that I've set up dozens of appointments that I've gone into. I keep on getting told that supposedly if I jump through these hoops, then the cops will have to do their job. Well, they don't want to do their job. And after committing the crimes they committed, they're not going to do their job.
So I'll take a look at any file care may have, which I agree, if we have any files, you certainly are welcome to access to that. But then secondly, I actually want to find out from ODHS who would be the agency that someone would be reporting to, what the steps and what the right process is for that. So I'm happy to do both of those things.
Yes, sir. Another thing is that some of the things that have done by care employees are just misdemeanors, but some of them are felonies. The situation here, I'm telling them about the crimes committed against me. This is probably the important part, the most important part. So when this video ends, I'm actually gonna probably start the next video around this part. That's just because the points to be made from here on in are that important, and this video is almost up. So I'm actually going to back it up just a few seconds, and we're going to end this video and download it, and then we'll get to the next one. There's probably about 20 or 30 conversations altogether. I am posting them somewhat in order. Some of them are only going to be a little bit out of order. Some of them are going to be a lot out of order just because I still have to download the recordings that I have for the series 3 of this and download it. So when I'm done with it all, I'm going to number it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on, so that it's at least numbered for the order it's supposed to be in. I apologize for any other inconvenience. I'm trying to do my best to make it easy for anybody who really does care and really does want to help. I'm trying to make the evidence easy for you to access and easy to understand.